Hello and welcome back. We are talking about general anatomy and physiology, and we are going to start off with osteology. I think that is slide 19. It may be on mine, but anyway, you can go along with the slides or in your book with the notes. When we talk about osteology, we're talking about the study of the anatomy, the structure and the function of the bones. Os means bones. Anytime you see os, is always talking about the bones and their structure. Let's talk about bone composition. The bone tissue is composed of several types of bone cells embedded in a web of organic salts. That's mostly calcium and phosphorus. That's why we drink things with calcium, or we drink the milk so that we could build the calcium in those bones. And collagenous and ground fibers. The web gives the bones strength, and the fibers give the bones the flexibility to move. When we think about the primary function of the skeletal system, we think about how it gives us shape and supports the body. It protects the internal structures and organs. It serves as attachments for muscles. It acts as levers to produce body movement. So when you're able to lift your legs up, or when you're able to move your legs or move your arms, it's almost like, in my mind, I see like puppet. You have a string to be able to move back and forth. And when we are talking about protecting the internal structures and organs, we have the rib cage that's protecting our hearts and our lung and the diaphragm and all those good things. So it also helps to produce white and red blood cells. It's a function of the bone marrow. So that's what gives us the life of who we are. And then the bones also store minerals. When we think about the joints, joints are the connection between two or more bones of the skeleton. So of course, right here on my pinky finger, that's a joint. It's connecting it together. The movable joints are those such as the elbows, the knees, and the hips. The elbows, knees, and hips. The immovable are such as the pelvic and the skull. The skull is going to protect the brain, so it's not moving, it's not going anywhere. Some people complain of joint pain, but the pain is usually caused by inflammation of the tissue around the joint. So I think about like arthritis, that type of thing. Is the muscles and the tissue around it rather than the joint or the bone itself. We have 203 movable and semi-movable joints on our bodies. The bones of the skull. We have the cranium. The cranium is a bony case that protects the brain. Then you also have the facial skeleton. It's the framework of the face is composed of 14 bones, 14 of those. So we have the bones of the cranium. We have the occipital. We have the occipital. It forms the back of the skull until the nape. Then you have the parietal. It forms the sides and the top of the cranium. Then you have the frontal, which is the forehead. You have the temporal, which is the sides of the head near the ear area. You have the ethmoid, which is between the eye sockets. And then you have the sphenoid, which joins all the cranium bones together. The ethmoid and the sphenoid bones are not affected when performing services or giving a massage. Then you have the bones of the face. You have the nasal, which forms the bridge of the nose. You have the lacrimal, which is the front, the inner wall of the orbits. You have the zygomatic. It forms the prominence of the cheeks. When you get into makeup artistry, you'll see that zygomatic bones. It's beautiful. The maxillae, which is the upper jaw, and the mandible, which is the lower jaw bone, is the largest and strongest facial bone. Let's see. Then you're talking about the turbinal. It's the spongy bone on either of the outer walls of the nasal depression. You have the vomer. It's a flat, thin bone that forms part of the nasal septum. You have the palatine. It forms the hard palate of the mouth. So I'm thinking this part up in here. You have the bones of the neck. You have the hyoid. It supports the our tongue. We only have one tongue. It supports the tongue and muscles. The cervical vertebrae is located in the neck region, and you should see your diagram there. We have the bones of the chest. You have the thorax, which protects the heart and the lungs. Then you also have the ribs. It forms the wall of the thorax. It has 12. You have 12 pair of those. You have the scapula. This the large, flat, triangular bones of the shoulder. You have the sternum, which is the breastbone. It supports the ribs. You have the clavicle, the collarbone. I remember when I was skinny, you could see that bone in there. Some of you all can't see your own, but nevertheless, I'm a little fluffy now, so I'm a little silly. Y'all should know that. It joins the clavicle, or the collarbone, joins the sternum and the scapula. We then go to the bones of the arm. You have the humerus. That's the largest arm bone from shoulder to the elbow. So from your shoulder all the way to your elbow. You have the ulna, which is the inner and the larger bone of the forearm. Then you have the radius, which are the smaller bones on the thumb side of the forearm. You have the bones of the hand, the carpus, which is the wrist. It has 8 irregular bones. The metacarpus is the bones of the palm. And you have the phalanges, or the fingers. They are also known as digits. Now we're going to go, after we finish the bones, we're going to the muscular system. Myology. This is the study of the structure, function, and diseases of the muscles. The human body has more than 630 muscles, responsible for 40% of your body's weight. Muscles are fibrous tissues with the ability to stretch and contract. That's why exercising is important, and you're stretching those muscles. You have the striated muscles with the skeletal muscle, and you have the non-striated muscles, which are the smooth muscles. The striated, or the let me get this so I can see. The striped, or the skeletal or voluntary tissue, which are controlled by the will. They create heat and energy during the muscles contraction. So while I think a good example of that is exercise. When you're moving your arm, you're creating that heat through the contraction of lifting and bending. It assists in maintaining the body's posture and protects some internal organs. Examples are your facial, your arm, leg muscles. The skeletal muscles comprise about 23% of the woman's body weight and 40% of the man's body weight. The non-striated, or the involuntary, visceral or smooth muscles, they function automatically without conscience, thought, or will. Will means that I personally do it, but automatically, without thought or will, it just happens. It's found in the internal organs, such as the digestive and the the respiratory system. So it's just normal for me to breathe. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to say, breathe, Alicia. No, breathing is just, we take no second thought for that. You have the cardiac, which is the heart muscle. It's found only in the heart. They power the action that pumps blood throughout the body. The cardiac muscles are also involuntary because they cannot be consciously controlled. So you can't think and say, beat heart, beat heart. It automatically does it. It has a rhythm and a pattern to that. Then you have the muscle parts. I think I'm going to stop right here and we'll start back on the next video with this one.